Brian Palavai on far here with Andy Jones-Wilkins after his 10th and final Western States 100 finish.
10th and final, Brian. You heard it here. Cheers. Bottoms up.
Bottoms up. Well, not quite yet.
Yeah.
You did just finish your 10th Western States on Saturday, or actually on, was it still Saturday?
It was 21 minutes into Sunday, I'm afraid.
Was that your first Sunday finish at Western?
No, actually, this was of the 10, this was only my 4th slowest. I'd been, last year I was 5 minutes slower than this, and in 2001 and 2006 I was over 20 hours. So this was a good one. And they all are.
They all are. You had some struggles along the way.
I did. For the first time in 10 runnings here, my stomach was not behaving. And in the scenic overlook just beyond Cal 2, I emptied my stomach out.
You feel better after that?
I felt better for a little while, but then that was the whole rest of the day. It was just keeping up with my stomach and making sure I had some energy topped off. I had a major puking event again up at Greengate, mile 80. And that one was
before, during, or after the aid station?
It was after.
Okay.
It was after, yeah.
That's a classic place to puke.
There seems to be a puking in the air.
Yeah.
There. But I emptied everything out there, and I had my whole crew with me, and they just watched and laughed. That's it.
Did Logan tweet about it?
Yeah. There's a video floating around out there somewhere.
I'm sure there is.
It was an emotional day. It climbing just right from the start, hugging Craig and at the starting line, going through that countdown one last time, climbing the escarpment, turning around to see the lake again. I had a wonderful hour and a half between Lion Ridge and Red Star with Nikki Kimball, who finished her 9th, and we just talked the whole time. Got our picture taken on Cougar Rock. We happened to be going over together. We paused to do that. So there was a little bit about the day that became kind of a reunion for me. I went through the canyons with Dan Barger, an 8-time finisher from here in Auburn, and then had 2 pacers who've been with me for a long time, and then finishing with you and my children who came out. It was quite a day.
There weren't many dry eyes in the house at that finish line.
There were no dry eyes in the finish line for me. No, I knew it was going to be an emotionally charged finish, but it was even more than I expected.
Yeah. A lot of good people around you. You wrote about the extended Western States family.
I really felt that family presence this year.
And it wasn't just people running in with you. It wasn't just people giving you a hug at the finish. I saw you 3 or 4 hours later. You were still yapping away, and
yeah.
There's just your immediate family. There's Monkey Boy. Skadden was sitting next to you at the moment. There's all these people who have been part of so many of your Western States experiences.
The people are inextricably linked to the experience, and yet that's one of the ironies of it, because as much as it's the people and the community that make it so special, at the end of the day it's about you and getting it done yourself, and the individual effort that it takes to get from Squaw to Auburn once, 5 times, 10 times. And it's that part that that has been just made this such a wonderful ride, that it's that perfect blend.
And it's interesting, because I thought about that at the finish. Like, here's everybody who wants their moment with you, because they've shared it with you. But how were you able to appreciate it for yourself? Because it is a journey of one, from Squaw to Placer.
Yeah. Well, I enjoyed it for myself a lot during those last 20 miles. When it really sunk in that it was going to happen, and I was going to get a silver buckle, and I didn't have any stress of a finishing time. Aside from that, I felt like I just let it soak in, and when I got to the finish, I had a little bit of time to myself, and then Shelley and you and Craig and Monkey Boy and my parents, and I mean, It's not like anybody died, but certainly a little part of me, I left there.
Moved to another phase.
Yeah. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Even though you keep saying, I'm going to be back.
Your father, one of the two people who've known you the longest, was in your hotel room here yesterday saying, "You're going to eat your words."
Well, let's not go there now. Let's not go there.
Are you already backpedaling a little bit?
I am not. You will not see my name on that lottery list
for a while. You said you got to just soak up the last 20 miles. But you had sort of created a little competition within the competition with Eric Skadden.
Yes, there's no doubt. And Eric, let the record show, Eric got the better of me. I was 11 minutes and 38 seconds behind him in our 9 aggregate finishes, which I thought was pretty remarkable, having done that for so many years, that we were so close. And I talked, like I usually do, a big game about how I was going to beat him by that much. But when he floated by me after No Hands Bridge, only the second time I'd been passed after No Hands Bridge in my Western States career.
10 years, 2 passes. Who was the other?
Dave Mackey. Dave Mackey and Eric Skadden passed me after No Hands Bridge.
That's some select company.
Yeah. But
so Dave, maybe you have figured out the 100-mile thing.
But Eric, when Eric did come up on us, my son turned to me, he said, "What, you got nothing? You're gonna let him do that?" And I turned to him and I said, "Yeah."
So does Eric now have the fastest 10 combined finishes?
He does not. He does not. Tim Tweetmeyer has the fastest, and Ann Trayson has the second fastest. Eric has the third, and I have the fourth. There are 2 guys in between Ann and Eric, but they ran back in the 80s, and there's generally an asterisk next to those due to the fact that the course was anywhere from 88 to 94 miles back then. So just like Jim King's 1454 course record is just got a little asterisk. Not to take anything away from those.
It was a different course. It is a course record, but
it's a course record on a different course. The 10 aggregate finishes, it's Tim and Ann and Eric and me. Which, just saying that kind of gives me the chills.
It's a pretty select list right there.
Yeah.
So 2 days later, what do you have? What do you think about your run on a performance basis? Was it as best you could do on that day?
No. I mean, my legs feel really good. My feet are fine. I think because I had the stomach issues that were similar to times you've been along with me, like at the Teton 100 7-8 years ago, or maybe 5 or 6 years ago, or Leadville. Once I lose my stomach and I'm having to play that game of yo-yoing with energy, I just can't. I mean, I was solidly in a position to run kind of 18:55 or just be under 19 hours. I kind of had this little thing I'd finish before midnight. But, I think I scrubbed those 20 minutes with the 2 puking episodes and just the effort I had to put into, nibbling on food and getting everything back. So it was about a B minus effort for me. But I have to say, running the last mile in a personal worst time, I wouldn't have traded that for any other way and any other thing in the world. I mean, cresting that hill with the party at the top of Roby, and I really didn't want it to end. And I've run down that road with enough stress over the last 9 years that it was perfectly fine with me to run down that road with no stress.
I think in running that final mile with you, I think I found a future pacer, because one Logan Jones-Wilkins was
I know.
checking the watch. We were looking over the shoulder.
Logan wants to run this race someday, and I'll encourage him to. But I don't think he wants me to pace him because he thinks I'm too slow.
Well, how old is he? 14?
Yeah.
So he's got 4 more years, which means you'd be
50.
Yeah, Logan, good thinking. I'll pace you. Is it time? Oh, we are through the first segment here.
Yeah. Stone.
Going with some fine Lagunitas.
We finished up the Hop Stupid, and we're moving on to the classic Stone IPA. Excuse us.
Important things. Teamwork, right?
It's the community.
Yeah, the community. Speaking of community, that's a perfect segue. The final finisher. of the 2014 Western States, Tom Green. Original Grand Slammer.
Just amazing.
10th Western States. And the final finisher, starting off another Grand Slam 28 years after the first. What amazed me is the community aspect of that. I mean, we put everything out on social media. The most favorited tweet, other than a couple about Rob's finish, was Tom Green's finish.
Oh, it was when I was standing out by the gate coming into the high school, just greeting those last, you know, the people between 29:40 and 29:50, and when he came around the corner on Finley and came in, I couldn't contain myself. You know, Tom is such a mild-mannered guy. I remember sitting in Craig Thornley's kitchen after the lottery, and an email popped up in Craig's computer from Tom, and it said, "Hey, Tom," it said, "Craig, I think I should gain entry into the Western States in 2014. I finished my 9th in 2013. And Craig quickly looked it up, and it turned out he finished his 9th in 2013 in 29:40 something. And he had finished his 8th in, get this, 2002 in 29:40. So this is a guy who's a pro at chasing the cutoffs. So when I learned, of course, he gained entry, and he was going to be another one of the group of 10 finishers. I struck up a bit of a relationship with him. He's from back in Maryland in the East Coast and runs a lot of the Virginia Happy Trails events. And sure enough, we crossed paths at Bull Run, and he said, "Well, I'm going to chase the cutoffs again." And boy, he did. I do hope you're able to get a chance to interview him, maybe if it's just over email or in writing, because the story he told of pretty much from last chance, mile 43, he was the last runner. He you know, everybody else, he was being, the runners that were still coming in after him were being pulled, and he was literally racing the cutoffs for 57 miles, over 15 hours.
And that means you can't have a bad patch.
No, you can't have a bad patch.
If he slows down for...
You can't sit down, you can't fix your shoe, you gotta go. It's amazing, amazing. And the fact that he's done it in such a low-key, humble, understated way, that guy's incredible.
Because in this day and age of fastest known times and people creating their own slams and rightly so, talking them up, I believe when he went for the first Grand Slam, he was just going to run the 4, and I think Ultra Running magazine may have done something to create the Grand Slam.
Yeah.
Tom Green just wanted to run 400s.
He just wanted to run the 400s. And they said, well, what are we going to call it? Let's call it the Grand Slam.
And 28 years later, he's out there trying it again. What do you think is going to be the... I mean, if he runs 29:57 at Western States, what's going to be the hardest one, do you think, for him?
It's got to be Leadville, because Vermont will be in his wheelhouse. He'll be okay with the humidity. He can power hike all those roads. If his health holds together and his recovery goes fine, I think he'll be comfortably under the cutoffs at Vermont. Wasatch has a more generous cutoff. I think it's generous enough for him to get to gut that one out.
There's a lot of climbing, but it's lower in elevation generally.
But 30 hours at Leadville, you know, that's going to take a big effort on his part, and I'm not going to doubt him. I think he can do it.
Yeah.
but that's going to probably be his biggest challenge. Having done the 4 races, that's one that it'll bite you.
Yeah, and I have no idea, but I can't imagine he's going to go out 3 weeks early.
No, I don't know. He'll go out. He'll do what he did here. Come out a couple days before and leave a couple days after and hope for the best.
Get it done.
Yeah.
What an amazing story. Yeah. Were there any other stories out there this weekend that really resonated?
Well, I mean, I thought I'll start with on the front end with Rob Craw. His, you know, the way he ran from Forest Hill to the finish was. The splits, as Tweet said on Sunday, were just mind-boggling. 2:03 down Cal Street. I mean, I've run Cal Street 40 times, you know, in competition and in training, and I know every rock and every turn and every little... That's just moving. That's moving. I think of Morton's 2:16 that we had all been like, oh my God, what a Cal Street split. And as Tweet said also, Max is running 2:11 and getting passed.
So people think like Max went out super hard and blew up and got past.
He was not blowing up. I mean,
he was running one of the fastest splits in race history.
So, but then what's more remarkable is Green Gate to the finish in 3 hours. I mean, yes, it's the buttery, single-track, runnable part of Western States, but you got 80 miles on your legs, and he just ripped that up. So, Rob Carr, here's to you, man. That was amazing, and it was also nice to chat with you at the finish line. On the women's side, and I know you picked her, Stephanie Howe, she delivered in her first-time 100. I ran with her on the first weekend in May. I was not in shape yet, and we were out. We ran the ice cream sandwich run, about 52 miles on the Western States course. And she was being very cagey. It was interesting. She didn't really want to run the whole thing. And every time we got back to one of our checkpoints and got more food, she'd say, oh, I'll keep going, I'll keep going. And I had this inkling that she was on to something when I saw her downhill legs. And I'm not sure, I haven't had a chance to talk to her about it, but my guess is the key to her race was conservative in the high country, which she was, and hammering the downhills. And she did that. So both of those winning efforts were super, super impressive. You know, down the line, there were some gutsy runs out there. It was a weird day. People who don't typically have tough time in the high country, Megan Arbogast, Matt Keys, Nikki Kimball, had a tough time in the high country. And people who usually hammer the canyons felt, I don't know if it was unusually dry. It wasn't hot, but it was unusually dry, or if there was or if the fire that had come through the canyons and the Pucker Point section. So the middle of the race, it felt like for me, I didn't really even get into a rhythm until, I don't know, Cal 1, because it was, you kind of just fighting the course instead of going with the flow of the course. But in general, you know, it was like every other Western States I've been a part of. It was a celebration. There were highs, there were lows, there was all the love of the trail, and a really, really special day.
Speaking of the fire, I hadn't been out here on the course since the fire last year. I was shocked at how big a fire that was. It was just driving through it, and I only saw part of it. It's huge.
Yeah.
Having run an 04 and 05 after the Star Fire on an alternate course, and then moving to back to Duncan Canyon after it had been burned out, totally exposed, makes the race way tougher because it's starting to get warm there some years, and you're exposed on a south face, excuse me. What exactly is it like on that new burned out section?
Yeah,
like Devil's Thumb.
It's rough, and it's going to get rougher. So for those who don't know, the fire burned about a 19-mile section of the trail from just after Dusty Corners, which is mile 38, all the way through to Last Chance and Devil's Thumb and down into the second canyon there, El Dorado Canyon. And the burnout in the Pucker Point section, so you leave Dusty Corners, you have a nice little road section, the trail was in as bad of shape as I've seen it in. And it looked to me, I'd have to confirm this with the race officials, but it looked to me as though the Forest Service has identified a bunch of hazard trees that are going to be removed. So I think that's going to actually be, because that's an area that gets hit every winter. It's such a steep. So I think there's going to be a lot of clearing out in there. But then, Last Chance to Devil's Thumb. I mean, there are parts of that Devil's Thumb climb where you just feel like you're in a wasteland. And there's a whole bunch of hazard trees in there. And the trail crew has done an amazing job. They replaced the Pacific Slab Bridge. We crossed on a rope because the swinging bridge is gone. The trail had extreme erosion because after the fire, then they weren't able to. Yeah, and they did the best they could, and it's still runnable and nice trail, but especially the bottom part when you're coming out of and beginning to climb to Devil's Thumb, I don't think it was a factor in the race per se, but I think it should be something people pay attention to in the years to come, because it's just as the Star Fire changed that environment around Duncan for forever. I think this fire is going to change the area around Deadwood Canyon and Devil's Thumb for a long time.
It's interesting because I keep thinking the trail crew does a ton of work, and people, old timers, you could probably chime in on this. The trail itself, the actual physical terra firma, has gotten easier over the years.
I would say yes.
Like a significant amount.
Well, a lot of the effort that the current immediate group of Mark Falcone and Don Zay and Tim Tweetmeyer has, they've made a point of piece by piece, section by section, wanting to not groom the trail, but they want it to be a fair test and they want it to be a runnable course, and they've done that. I mean, the joke is that Tweet started working on all the sections that were terrible for him when he ran the race 25 times. So you take, for example, from Cool Meadow down to No Hands Bridge. I mean, that's buffed out.
That was even my first couple. 04, I remember I blew out a pair of shoes. It was a horse rut that was literally foot wide, more than a foot deep, and you kind of had to do this weird style run to get through it.
It's going to be a while, I think, before the descent to Swinging Bridge gets back to normal.
And that was one of the more technical sections of the course to begin with.
And the descent to Duncan is still, if there's one technical place on this course, it's that, and that's still that way. So, I mean, it's a fair test. As for me, I still wish there was a little more road on it, but that's because I like to chill out on the road parts. But
so you'd go back to the Starfire course
and Duncan and Deep Canyon. Oh, I loved Deep Canyon, Kavanaugh Ridge to Deep Canyon, but there's no going back. No one's going to do that.
Speaking of changes, you are not one. I know one of your best friends is currently the RD, but you still would never hold your opinion back. With all your experience, what is one thing you would change about Western States?
Well, we're going down the right road with as we spoke about earlier in the week, on the new qualification requirements. Mm-hmm. I would like to see some continued effort to involve the greater community along the trail, and particularly in Auburn. I was particularly I wouldn't say dismayed, but not everybody in Auburn knows about the Western States 100. Not everybody in Auburn knows the magnitude of this event. So I don't know. If there was a way to more engage the communities along the trail. It's not UTMB, right? Where that's a huge part of the experience, is going through these towns and villages. We see it in Michigan Bluff, but as we all know, that's an interesting community up there of just a few dozen houses and so forth. But the one change I'd like to see, and I don't know what it would require, but a more active involvement in this finishing town of Auburn, like the finishing towns of when you're a finishing town in the Tour de France or something. I mean, that's a big deal.
I mean, could it be moving it from? I mean, the track is classic, but could it mean moving it to downtown?
Well, that's a thought. Could you involve literally runners running right down Main Street? And the merchants' shops are open and there's music playing, and again, I don't know, and it's a little thing, but sometimes those symbolic celebratory aspects of an event that is become so iconic would be helpful. We have seen up in Squaw, as the Squaw Valley Village has evolved, and that's become race headquarters, that there's a definite vibe up in Squaw. Now, that's not a town. The thing about Auburn is it's a town, and people are here for 48, 72 hours following the race. You really can capitalize on that.
And it's interesting. It'd be interesting to incorporate Auburn as a town, but Sacramento, which is very close, really plays itself up and is like, yeah, Bend has Nike. I mean, Eugene has Nike, so it has the track championships a lot. But we're the better fans. We have more knowledgeable, more passionate fans. It'd be interesting to see if, along those same lines, if you changed the venue for the finish and tweaked not the atmosphere, but tweaked how the finish was, if you could incorporate a huge city like Sacramento.
You might be able to. And there's another piece to that too, with making the ending experience really deeply meaningful and purposeful and involving the community. And that's what I clearly saw this year, and Shelley, my wife, did as well, being around the crews and pacers, and the people are coming out here in force. A runner gets in, and he's going to bring his 2 kids and his cousins and his wife and his buddies from work.
His parents are going to be there.
And his parents are going to be there, like mine. And they're going to get 2 minivans, and this is Western States. And I mean, that pre-race briefing in that very, very large conference room up in school was packed And people are hungry for this, what this event brings, the meaning it brings to one's life. And I think that there are just ways that you could tweak it. As far as what not to change, I mean, there's some potential course changes that could happen. There's some potential. I know there's always been a long-term goal to increase the amount of single track, to figure out a way to integrate more of some of the historic points in the middle of the course, whether it's Pacific Slab Mine or some of the other places that link the historic corridor between Last Chance and Michigan Bluff. But I would not meddle with the course at all. I mean, and I know some people are sitting here saying, look at all these fast times. My God, the 20th place was 18:16 this year. And, you know, that would have been top 10 for the first 35 years of this race. But that doesn't mean the course is easy. That means the talent coming here is talented. And that's great for this event, and it's great for all of us. So I wouldn't mess with that. But some of the more environmental, cultural parts are probably worth considering. And I have a hunch that the race board and Craig and the team of aid station managers and so forth, they realize that. They understand how big this is for so many people.
It's so big. I mean, worldwide, the amount of number of people following this race. That is the thing that could change, because there are more people following in probably some little towns in France or Spain than Auburn.
Let me ask you that. Are you seeing that from where you? I mean, I don't want to turn the interview around, but are you seeing in the context of your work with I Run Far and the way in which you provide exposure to the sport? Is this a global? I mean, this is a global event. I mean, I know the World Cup's going on, but this is like ultra running's little version of the World Cup. There are people up at all hours of the night checking to see
around the world, global. I mean, we had somebody, a friend Murray Pagliacci, translated all their stuff into Spanish, and there were a ton of people following the race in Spanish. And there was at the front of the field, Miguel Arras. There was one native Spanish-speaking runner. Okay, Jorge as well, but people who live in a Spanish-speaking country. And it's just amazing that you have that kind of engagement that from another language, and it's just around the world. People follow the race. I mean, and there were 5 great races this weekend. There was Western States, there was the Laboredo Ultra Trail, there was 3 races at the Skyrunning World Championships in Chamonix, and Western States is there. It's really become a much more global event in the 10 years I've been here. 2004 was my first year, running 100 in the first year here, and I just remember the breakout year with Bragg and Kabaraki and
2009.
It became an international race in terms of racers. And that's one thing that I think can continue to grow. I think it's a very hard situation for the board and Craig to be faced with such a limited field, because you want to be egalitarian, but it's also one of the most competitive ultras in the world every year. So how do you balance that? There's a ton. The Montreal Ultra Cup does a great job. Everybody's racing that to try to get on the U.S. side, but it's hard for somebody from overseas to make that flight. Now you have the Ultra Trail World Tour with a couple spots and the separate international consideration.
I think that will be. I think that will continue to evolve. The way in which the elite field is shaped here at Western States, international, domestic. Perhaps even, I might envision a series of races that are global, a Montreal Ultra Cup global version, which it could be the UTWT, but it could also be something that we haven't yet envisioned yet, and that's okay. I think at the end of the day, you still have really fast, talented runners coming to this thing, and you have people like Tom Green who are coming here to get it done, and they came here 28 years ago also.
On a personal note, 2 people that really have a strong hold on both of our lives and our ultra running careers, Tommy Nielsen and Scotty Mills. Scotty wasn't out here. And for me, like, I didn't tweet it this weekend, but like, it was, for me, he is Western States. Like, he is my physical embodiment of Western States. Like, for a lot of people, it's Gordy, the pioneer. For me, it's Scotty Mills. And what was it? I mean,
it was weird not having Scotty here. I know
he's training for Hard Rock out in Silverton. So
he decided to go to Silverton and miss Western States.
Lucky.
Yeah. I'm not feeling sorry for Scotty. Don't get me wrong.
It's 104 here today.
And I didn't even see Tommy. I know Tommy was here up at the pointy end. I think he was crewing and pacing for Chris Price, who had a great run in the top 20, right? Somewhere in there. Yeah, you know, Tommy is my Scotty. You know, he taught me everything I know about ultramarathon running. But their hearts are. I mean, even if Scotty's training this weekend in
I have a feeling
his heart,
he was somewhere.
He was somewhere keeping an eye on things. I got a note from him after I finished. So
I
know he's not. I know he's not asleep.
Scotty, you were here, even if you weren't here in person.
Yeah, and you know, those are the guys and the people. I mean, it's not just limited to. I saw Annie at the. We got a crack
Stone IPA.
Yep, going down.
Second.
You know, I chatted with Annie out when I was saying Ann Trayson as the 30-hour, 29-30 people were coming in, and she had been out. She paced in 3 different people, just little pacing jobs. But yeah, it's the race. The people come and go in waves, but we're going with that one for the last one.
Talon Double IPA.
But there are also people who have their heart in this event and will be here for every year for a long, long time, like me.
Like you. That is, man, you've emceed some things before, because that is the perfect segue to, well, first, congratulations on 10.
Thank you.
Can we see?
Has anybody seen my buckle yet?
Is that in the shot? All right, there we go, it's in there. This is what you get for the silver, but 24 hours. 100 miles, 1 day.
That's what you get.
You do it 10
when
times?
When you do it 10 times, you get one of those.
All right, before we get into segue to you, any advice to me who wants to get one of those one of these days? Longevity.
You just got to keep at it. You just got to keep at it. I mean, there's guys. Greg Nako, for example, he finished. He's got a couple of yellows to go with his, I think, 7 silvers, but he's on 9 right now from Marin County. He finished his 9th on Sunday morning, and he'll be back next year, and he'll get the job done. But he started in '92, so it's patience, my friend. It's like running an ultra. You're maybe going to be in your late 40s by the time you get one of these. What do you got?
I got 4.
4.
And I'm not running the top 10 anytime soon. It's funny, I was like talking to Brett. I interviewed Brett Rivers after the race. And years ago, when I started getting into the sport, I think I ran 21st place my second and third Western States. Mm-hmm. And the times were slow enough then that I wasn't taking it seriously. I was going in law school and working full time, and it's like maybe someday I could run top 10. Maybe that could be my outside goal. And now it's just unbelievable. And then you have other people like Brett Rivers who've been doing this for a while and slowly work their way in. It's just incredible.
Yeah. Oh, it is. And you know, it's almost like how you say, I mean, maybe you don't because you're a smart guy, but I say stuff like, oh, I'd never get into Hamilton College now. You know, and I got in 25 years ago. It's kind of like, well, I'd never be in the top 10 now because, you know, heck, I got a 6th place finish with 20:06.
06?
In 06, I ran 20 hours and 6 minutes and got 6th place. I mean, what the heck?
Well, I was talking to Monkey Boy.
And there were competitive runners there.
Monkey Boy, Scott Wolf.
Scott Wolf.
Yeah. He just finished 21st.
18-18.
I finished 21st in, I think, 22-15 in 2006.
Yeah. So it's...
Granted, that was a hot year.
Yeah.
It's the extreme.
And there are always surprises. But it's... I love that. I love that it's this competitive thing. I also, by the way, love the fact that I was able to get my top 10s when it wasn't all that competitive.
You got 7 straight? Are you saying if you were
in
30,
my prime
38
now,
right now, it would be
it'd be a lot harder.
I mean, that's a good question. If you were your 04 to 06 Andy Jones-Wilkins and you raced today, or not today, Saturday.
Yeah.
Who are you running with? Are you running with Jesse Haynes? Are you running with Paul Terranova?
I'm in the, you know, I've always known very well what my limits were. The only reason I went under 17 in 2011 is because we had that easier course. Even in my prime, that 04, 05, 06, 07, I knew I was a 17-hour guy. And, you know, one of my best races was 17:20 in 2007. That was 4th place. But, you know, I know the course so well. There's only so many places I could get time. I don't have the foot speed on the flats that these guys like Rob and Max have, and I just had the, I'm just a power hiker and a blazing downhill, or at least I was back then. So I'm glad I'm done. Now I can hang out and watch them, and that's fun.
So what does that look like for you next year?
I really, really want to give back to Western States. I haven't tried to do this, Brian, but I think I've become somewhat of an ambassador for the Western States 100. And I know for many people watching, it can be kind of annoying. It's like all AJW cares about is Western States. And I know it sometimes seems like it, but I've always been an all or nothing kind of guy. And that's in my running and in my job and in who I am as a person. And Western States is my all. And if I can share my enthusiasm and energy for Western States with other people, then what's wrong with that? It may be annoying. They don't have to listen to me. But it's an amazing, amazing event that's changed my life, changed who I am, changed my relationship with the rest of my life. And it's just a race, Why has it done that? But it has. And so for the next 10 years, if I can, I'd like to spread that enthusiasm in the way that I think I can as a person who's experienced this since 2001.
I have two takeaways from that. So we will see you in 2025.
Well, we might. We might. I also, we've talked a couple times about Craig Thornley, and I think you all know, and the people watching this video also may know, that Craig does have a long-term goal of being able to run the race as the race director, that he'd like to. It'll take a few more years, I think, but to get his staff in place and to get his volunteer crew in place where he can actually run the race and still be the race director during that time. I know it seems almost anathema to some people in the race director business, but he did a little test run on the Sunday training camp run this Memorial Day, where he ran the Cal Street Loop. He had, now that's his 600-700 runners running the Cal Street Loop. Lots of things can happen. And he jumped in with everybody else and ran the Cal Street Loop. So when that time comes, when it's time for Craig to go for his 10th, I want to be a part of that. Whether I'm pacing him or crewing him or providing whatever support he might need around the race. I'm not really a good detail guy, and he's got to-do lists that have details going for pages and pages, but I can be a cheerleader, I think. And so that would be one thing I definitely want to do, because getting that 10-year buckle from him on Sunday morning was pretty incredible.
Maybe you could hand over.
Well, I don't know about that. Tweet might want to do that.
I think there'd be another very large assemblage of people
at
that finish line.
Oh yeah, and a few tears.
It's interesting you say to be an ambassador of the event. It's been interesting seeing Topher Gaylord over the years be one for Ultra Trail de Mont Blanc, and he at UTWT now. People who have a voice and are articulate and passionate add something, even if they're discussing a particular race, like you in Western States or Topher and UTMB, add something to the sport because you add your passion and your enthusiasm. And where else do you see that in the sport? Even if one not advocates for a particular race, but is somebody can cheer on the San Francisco Giants or the Philadelphia Phillies and add to baseball as an exciting thing to follow. If you're not in the U.S., you probably don't think it's very exciting.
Right.
But what other examples do you have of people who are passionate about a particular event and add to the sport in that way?
Well, that's a really good question, because I think that there are individuals in the sport who are inspiring people. and their lifestyle or their energy or their race results inspire others. And then there are events that do that. So you might see the video or the advertisement from a company or from an individual that excites you and makes, oh, I want to do that. And then when it comes from an event, though, my goodness, you have it almost becomes cultish. And you're right about Topher. That's an incredible. Topher is an incredible motivational speaker. The words just come out of his mouth, and it's like, I want to do whatever he says, and what he's done for UTMB, and the speech he makes every year here at the pre-race briefing, and that's just marvelous. But then you look at the other side. You look at an event like Hard Rock, where you're heading that way in the next couple of days. They don't necessarily have that charismatic leader. They have Dale, who's an outstanding race director,
but a quiet
race director. They've got the board made up of a wonderful assemblage of kind of mountain weirdos like Rock Horton and other people, and yet the event itself is what makes it have life.
Running for Haverford College back in the day, we had a two-word sort of slogan or mantra: quiet confidence. And that's
what Hard Rock has. We are Hard Rock.
We are damn hard, and we are damn beautiful, and we're going to do it our way. And
absolutely. And here's the beauty, though. Look, we've just finished Western States. The eyes of the world have been on. You had 90,000 page views on Saturday. The Western States website had up to 1 million hits on people checking results and so forth. Now the eyes of the ultra world are going to the American ultra world are going to drift over to Silverton.
The ultra world
will drift to Silverton, and the excitement will build around that event, and then what up? The sky's the limit. I think the eyes of the world will then circle back. Whatever happens in the summer in Leadville, they'll circle back to UTMB. I wanted to add one more thing about UTMB, and that was I had a chance to meet the race director, Catherine, who was visiting with Craig this weekend, and she brings a whole different level of passion to her event, her relationship with Chamonix, her relationship with you've been there, the other towns and villages. I so want to go there someday. The towns and villages. She spoke about how distinctly different it was to go into Italy, and then to go into Switzerland, and then to go back into France, or maybe it's the other way around, I'm not sure, but that in and of itself has its own unique excitement. So I think we have so many ways to go, and they're almost all up.
And it's interesting because people think that there's X race or X series or X persona, and it's one versus the other, and there can only be one champion, but
no, it's not true at all. There were a lot of champions on that track on Sunday.
When I was writing about Tom Green today, I think I used the hashtag Ultra is community.
Yeah.
And as much as you want to be on the number one, or any individual or race or series or whatever, it's not about that in the end.
Brian, that's what I'm going to miss the most. I've been living in Virginia for 3 years, but running from Squaw to Auburn on Saturday, I felt like everybody knew me. I felt like everybody was pulling for me. I felt like everybody was pulling for everybody. And where do you get that? Where do you get that in life these days in 2014?
It's not just about the fans. Like your competitors,
the athletes.
I don't care if it's Max King and Rob Craw and whoever else is up at the front. You know what? They want to win and they want to run their best race, but they also want the guy next to them.
I want to circle back to one more inspiring run from Saturday, because Shelley, my wife, had a role in this, and that was Nick Clark's run. I'm not sure if you've talked to Nick, but Nick was up till Saturday was a 4-time consecutive time top 10er.
First guy to go sub 16
twice, and just didn't have his best day on Saturday. I got to Michigan Bluff, mile 55, and my son told me Dad, you wouldn't believe this. Mom just talked Nick Clark off the chair and got him moving again. And I'm kind of proud of Shelley for this, because she sat there and talked to Nick and said, you don't want to drop. You don't want to stop here. And fast forward a couple hours later, I was running down the elevator shaft, the section where you face planted, pacing me, and did a worm and got right back up. I wish I had had a video of that, by the way.
It was perfect.
And Nick, I saw Jacob Riedman, who was pacing him, and then I saw Nick, and he was, you know, the elevator shaft is not a fun downhill if your quads are shot. No. And
Clarkie's
quads were shot, and he was picking his way down. And I stopped and I gave him a hug and I said, I love you. He said, I love you back. And Clarkie. I said, I love you to Clarkie.
And he said it back.
He said, I love you to me. You heard it here first, by the way. Clarkie, I do love you. I really do. But I was sure at that point he was going to drop. Well, then, apparently, as he gets into Cal 2, he sits in a chair for a little while. Casey Lake-Ting shows up from Nebraska. She was, you know, kind of making her way through the race. They connected. They ran to the river together. And one thing led to another, and Clarkie gets to the finish right around 21 hours. So I'm like, Clarkie did it, and he ran from top of Roby to the finish line, maybe faster than anybody the whole day. All of a sudden, he got his legs back. And so he comes to the finish, and I'm chatting with him, and he comes around, and he looks me in the eyes, like, where's Shelley? I was like, Shelley, my wife? He's like, yeah, I want to see Shelley. It's like, why? She is the reason I finished this thing, or one of the reasons I finished this thing. And they had this moment. I said, well, she's over getting pizza or something, but she'll be back in a few minutes. And to see Clarkie, you know, a guy I admire, who I've seen, you know, at the top of the sport, and Shelley, my wife, who's kicked my ass dozens of times for all sorts of reasons over the years, to kick Clarkie's ass out of that chair, I was inspired for both of them, you know? And that's what you're saying. That's part of the community. You know, it's like, this was just my wife. She spends all her time, you know, dealing with my boys and my issues, and took 5 minutes with that guy, a guy we admire and love. That's what it's about.
Next time I get it, I'm hiring Shelley to be my... Shelley, what is it going to take for you to crew me?
She's on, there's a lot of people...
Because Megan's got to work.
There's a lot of people who want Shelley.
All right, the bidding war starts now. You say you want to be an ambassador for Western States,
yeah,
but you're also a Western States geek, completely.
Yes, I am.
To give you credit, I believe you were the first to pick up on Clarkie, being the first under 16 twice. And,
yeah. And then you stole it from me.
I did not steal. I am giving you proper credit right now.
But now I think Sharman's been under 16 twice, right?
Well, as of last year, two more people did it. Timmy.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And somebody else did it last year. Give me a little help here.
Well, it might have been Sharman. I can't. Those guys are so fast, I can't keep track. 16, 15, whatever.
Speaking of giving geek credit,
yeah,
Ian Sharman picked up on the fact there were more 15XX finishers than 16 or 17.
Yeah.
Nice work, Sharman.
Well, that's an interesting, that means there's the point. You got the point of the, and then there's a little bit of a spread. You know, what I thought when the whole top 10 pressure was building, that we'd end up having these top 10s with, you know, 45 minutes between first and 10th. Now, I don't know what it was this year, but it was at least an hour and a half, wasn't it?
It was significant, yeah.
Yeah, and
yeah,
then
it was 15 or 14:53,
and then what was Jesse?
It was over 16 hours.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's going to be an interesting evolution, because the fast guys are getting faster, and then that second tier, anything can happen in there. So
there was, I think it was you and I and some other people observing on before the race, maybe I think it was me actually, that the guys from M6 to M10 in 1 year, the guys who sneak in, there are guys who are at the very top of the field who may fade to a second half of the top 10, and that happens. They're just another level of athlete, and it's incredible. But then there's the guys who have raced into the back of the top 10. The people like maybe Yassine could, or a Jesse Haynes, or a
Paul Terranova,
yeah, or Scott Wolf was M11, like, or not. But there's these people who race their way into that second half of the top 10, and the next year have real trouble. Because what is it? Is it people? I mean, you've been in that position more recently. People who, is it? Do they boost their confidence and think that they can run faster, or is it that they ran really well one year and think they can train more and do even better? What? There's this temptation, maybe, to get that spot and then even improve it. You were 7 times in a row.
Well, I think there's both. You know, Timothy Olson's a good example. His first Western States, he ran a very solid 6th place. And no one had heard. I mean, he had won Pine to Palm, but no one had really heard of him, and it was a solid 6th place, and that was what he could do on that day. And then the next year he won. Mm-hmm. And I think for at least some people, that sent a message. Well, if you have a year and you can find your way into the top 10, then you can run to win the next year. And I don't know if that was stupid people or a different approach or a different attitude. But it's really, there's a big difference between being first and being 6th. I know it seems like it shouldn't necessarily be, but for me, having been 2nd and 8th or 10th, it is a big difference. And it takes a different mindset, and it takes taking risks at the beginning that you wouldn't normally take if you're just running for, 8th. You know, that group, the 6 to 10 group, last year and the 6 to 10 group this year, I think the only repeater is Jesse. Yeah,
and he ran a very smart race. Yeah. At Robinson Flat, I would have said he's out of it.
Yeah.
Not a chance,
because he was probably over 30th place.
Whatever, he was back,
and that
time-wise, he was back.
That takes patience. That takes especially in a year like this one. There's less carnage in a cold year.
Like last year was super hot. You can have
kind of count on carnage. I could be 55th at Robinson and finish 17th. This year, being 50th at Robinson, I was like, no way. It's just not. It was, and so I think that second group. The funny thing is, every year in this race, you're going to have 5 to 7 guys who are going to run to win, and then you might have 20 more who are going to be those top 10ers.
But how many of those those other top 10ers decide they're going to run to win or run to podium? Take that back. How do you realistically set your expectations for your key focus race?
Well, I think you need to know what your goals are. You need to, if you're Dylan, you just want to improve on what you've done the last 2 years. I had a chat with Dylan yesterday. He said, I had a great run. It was my best one yet. I still have room to improve. That's what you hope a guy like that says. Not, I'm going to win next year. Because you never know what's going to happen next year. He just wants to improve. And Dylan's a talented athlete. He's worked his way into this sport. He's worked out. Look at Ian. I mean, when Ian was first coming here, he was, running comrades also, Ian Sharman. He was, and now this has become what he does at the end of June. The time will tell with this whole top 10 thing. But my gut is that if you want to be all my goal was just run well enough so I could come back again next year. I mean, my life revolved around just running well enough to run again.
Now, how would that change the dynamic if that second half of the top 10 from this year, so at least some of them, were to say, you know what, I just want to be back here again in 2016? Would that change their chances?
Well, that's a good question. That's a good question. I mean, if I were sitting on 5 like Ian is, 5 consecutive top 10s, and he's got 5 to go to get one of these, I know what I'd say.
What is that?
I'm just going to run to get top 10 every year, so I keep coming back.
But how,
But that's
not to pick on, but to focus on Ian then for a moment. He's had great success getting 5 straight top 10s. He's coached Ellie Greenwood to a win at Comrades. He's a talented runner with some speed at marathon distance even. How do you then not say to yourself, I'm going to go try to win this thing?
I guess it depends what matters to you. It's like life. If I think what's been obvious about my whole weekend here is there's one thing that matters to me, and that's the perpetual Western States machine. Like, I just want to be a part of it. And, you know, when I was a little wet behind the ears guy in 2004, and I got 8th place somehow, after being 2 years away from the race, 3 years away from the race, I said right then, damn, little old me can get 8th place. Let's ride this out. And I rode it out for 7 years, and then scrapped and clawed for the last 2, and here I am. But that's because I said only one thing mattered. You know, the funny thing about ultramarathon running is when you're in the midst of it, only one thing matters. Getting there. Just getting there.
But you're, I hadn't thought this before, but probably the perfect person to ask this. You were second here.
I was second.
How do you not say, I'm going to do, well, you talked a little bit about before the race, like, to temper that expectation?
Well, I mean,
during the race even.
I told you that. I thought I could win in 2006, and I overtrained. You know, when you finish second here, Seth Swanson, listen up. When you finish second here, you then think the next year you can win. It's just what happens. I mean,
Rob Carr did.
Let's look. And he did. So we'll
get back to that.
Right. But when you finish, you know, when you get that feeling, when you're that close, even though it was 24 minutes for me, and the guy who won isn't coming back, that's just what you think. It's human nature. But once that happened and I didn't do it, and it was kind of a bummer. I had all the cameras chasing me around and all this, and I was like finishing 6th. Once you don't do it, then you settle in. It's like life. Then you settle in and you say, okay, well, here's what I can control, here's what I can't. Let's just focus on what I can. And what I could control was getting one of these. And only 34 people have them, so that counts for something.
I did shoot out a photo, I think last evening. They do make 2,000 mile buckles.
I saw that. I saw that. Yeah, there's a few of those floating around. I think those guys who have 2,000 are really cool.
You do, I know you do. One thing that I would presume to say is that during your time here, 2001 was your first?
Yeah.
It's 2014. One thing you've seen is a rise of an ascendancy of sponsorship. The role of sponsors has changed in the sport tremendously. First, can you name all of your shoe sponsors in order?
I didn't know I was going to have a quiz. I started with Vask. Moved on to Montrail. Then La Sportiva. Then Hoka. And now I'm 3.
4, okay.
That's just shoe sponsors.
We're not going to get into no, because apparel we know.
Patagonia all the way. Patagonia all the way for apparel.
How have you seen...
Apologies for the sponsor plug.
No, it's not a sponsor plug. It was more of a dig on you having 4 different shoe sponsors.
Still looking for a beer sponsor, by the way.
That actually I will plug. Can you please hook this guy up some beer? Russian River? If you, that's a good question.
I'm not picky.
No. Oh, I was going to say, what if you could pick one beer sponsor, who would it be?
Sierra Nevada.
Really?
No brainer.
Even though I had Torpedo in my car and you picked up 3 great IPAs.
Well,
they're specialty. You don't get to try these every day.
They're one of the forefathers. Sierra Nevada is one of the forefathers. So,
do you think this race should have Sierra Nevada as a...
I think the race should have a beer sponsor.
It does, technically.
Well,
there wasn't any beer at the finish.
We'll have to change the finish line. Well, yeah, of course there wasn't. There's never beer at the finish at a high school.
Root beer, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe that's a good reason to change the location.
Fairgrounds, Main Street, Craig. 3 beers in, we're making a suggestion.
Hey, bottoms up.
Groupthink, not groupthink, with the Synchro blog.
Synchro blog, yeah.
Neither of us have held back in the past.
Right.
Change the finishing venue.
So we can have beer.
But it has been a major change in the sport, having sponsors involved.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to name examples, but there are people whose maybe Western states, but definitely 100-mile races have been compromised because of the incentives offered by, the structure of the incentives offered by sponsors. So how do you see positively and negatively, because there are definite positives, the change in sponsorship over the last 13 years.
If your sponsor says, look, if you win Western States, you get X amount of dollars. Oh,
I might have to run my car while you're talking.
I can understand why those people might go after it.
Yeah.
But that was never my motivation. I also think, as I talked about with you earlier in the week, when you run for a living, you have to think about that stuff. Mm-hmm. I've never run for a living, and I've never intended to run for a living, and I run because I love to do it and value it and think it's a great thing to do. But I think that most of all has changed the nature of what sponsorship means, and the idea of running 10 Western States in under 24 hours is probably not the thing that's going to appeal to a marketing department. You know, as much as it appeals, I think, to people who care about longevity and being tough and
Tom Green
and Tom Green. You know, a marketing department that's going to make some glossy ad in a trail running magazine, they don't want to know that you got 31st at Western States and got a 10-year buckle. And that's no disrespect to them. It's maybe disrespect to the culture we're in. But that doesn't change my opinion one bit about how it's important to have the sponsorship dollars in the sport. It's important to have these great athletes. You know, people who can run 2:11 on Cal Street and not even have the fastest split of the day. People like Stephanie, who Nikki Kimball, of course, helped bring into the sport. Nikki, who's, you know, one of the greats of our game. Gonna get one of these next year.
She got her ninth.
And by the way, there aren't many women who have these. And she's gonna get it with relative ease. You know, with 10 consecutive top 10s. And it's going to be way below the radar, and it's going to be the way Nikki wants it. And damn, that's what it's about. So yeah, it's changed. It's going to continue to change. I think the dollars are good, but you know, I hope that we can find a place of homeostasis. We're not there yet, but I hope we can. And the events are going to be a big part of it.
Now it's interesting that I mean, because there's almost a duality here, where there's the people who say, the people who have a job and a family and then run top 10 are better, and then there are people who say that, you know, being able to support oneself by running and being 20 something and free and exploring the world and exploring their limits and having a passion for life are better. I mean, how does one rectify that? I personally believe false split, this false dichotomy. I think it's a false dichotomy for sure. You know, if I was 25 now, you know, when I was 26, Shelley and I, my wife and I, had finished our first 5 years of teaching, and we left the country and traveled around the world for 2 years on our bikes. I hadn't discovered running yet. I hadn't. You know, if I knew this world had existed back then, it didn't exist. This was 1994, 93, 94, 95. If I knew this world existed and I knew that I had like an engine to run 100 miles, probably back then, in 16 hours on Western States course, I would have definitely done it. I would have said, hey, Shelley, we have no kids, we didn't know anything. So what did we do? We rode our bikes around the world. And by the way, that was awesome. Our relationship was cemented pretty much for life. And here we are 25 years later with 3 kids and a 10-year buckle and all this great stuff. But if I could rewind the tape and someone were to say to me, some sponsor's going to give you money and fly you around the world to run in races, and I would have taken it in a second. It's interesting because you are like, I hadn't even thought about this when I was asking the question, but one of the penultimate examples of the family guy, you know, your headmaster at a school.
Right.
But
yeah, but I still have that edge. I mean, I'm still ready to drop everything and go. I mean, what are we going to, my family and I for the next week are going to dirt bag out of the back of our minivan up in the Sierra.
See, if you could have 20 years ago been a dirt bag.
I would have been.
Not a second hesitation.
Not a blink. Not a blink.
So the Dakotas and the Tonys and the the Killians of this world.
I wish I could have been one of those guys in 1993, but there was no market for them then.
Now there is.
And good for them. Right? I mean, honestly, I kind of was one of them. But what I did is rode my bike around the world and camped out in the middle of Delhi, India on my bike.
What was that? What was your highlight of that 2 years of vagabonding?
Nicaragua. Have you ever been to Nicaragua?
No.
Those people are awesome. I'm just going to leave it at that. But if you want to see grit, if you want to see what it means to face up to adversity, face up to being the kid in school that no one likes, face up to being the person or the country or the region that's like an armpit, just go to Nicaragua. They're poetic, they're loving, and they have an absolute passion for baseball, or as they call it down there, baseball.
And beer? Cerveza?
They got some cerveza, but they skip through the cerveza. They have this rum they drink, like it's beer. But Nicaragua was by far the highlight. Shelley and I spent a week there. We could have spent a year there, and it's because they're tough people down there.
I know you have a lot more experience in life and ultra running than I do. Can I make a suggestion? Next year, go run an ultra in Nicaragua. I mean, so that's to bring the camera.
I think I'm gonna take a year off of running ultras next year.
I don't buy that for a second. I'm not even gonna.
You're calling BS on that?
That is total bullshit. So like we've talked about.
But I got 25 pounds I need to put on. Look how skinny I am.
Pick up. No. So we talked about what you might want to do with Western states in the future. What ultra running wise? What?
I'm going to say the same damn thing I said in our other. I want to go to Hard Rock. Dale, I want to go to Hard Rock.
What do you want to do at Hard Rock?
Spend a month in Silverton, run the race,
and you want to go sub 30, don't you?
Well, I want to go sub 28.
Sub 28.
Yeah. I want to finish before 10 a.m. and then go right to the brewery there, and Scott Jaime will be waiting for me. Or I might be waiting for him. You never know what Scott's going to do with that race.
But speaking of Scott Jaime, one person, the prediction contest every year we have on I Run Far for Western States, one person picks Seth Swanson to be first or second.
Was it Jaime?
Scott Jaime.
Damn that guy.
That was John Medinger-esque.
I've always known Jaime was a dick.
And that proves it. Did this Western States throw you for a loop in terms of how people did? I mean, we talked about.
I had no idea who this Swanson kid was.
But Rob and Stephanie, was there anybody?
Was there
anybody else in the top 10 who really surprised you, men or women?
Jared Hazen surprised me. What was he? 14th, 15th? Little
Somewhere
kid,
in there.
19 years old.
17, 30.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that?
Nobody else surprised me. You know, I don't want to sound. I don't want to offend anybody with this comment I'm about to make, but I was particularly struck with how slow the women's field was. I think Stephanie's race and the other women in the top 10 were fast, but I'm a little bit worried about the women's depth here at Western States. I think there were only 84 female starters in the race this weekend out of 360.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because Natalie Mauclair from France mentioned that there were, at least entrants, there were over 100 women, and that was so much better than the non-American races. And UTMB, I'm not sure, I'm going to guess 200 at Diagonal de Fou in Reunion Island, 100 of 2,000 plus
are women.
So the U.S. is at the forefront of women running ultramarathons, but how do we, I mean, I don't think there's a bias against women in the sport inherently. There shouldn't be. I mean, people like Nikki and Pam and Megan and all those are such an inspiration to us guys. I mean, I wear, whenever I run 100, I wear a Run Like a Girl hat, because those women inspired me to run smart and furiously strong races. But how do we, as a community, increase women's participation?
That's an excellent question, because I mean, just this weekend, my time with Nikki and Stephanie and even Casey, I didn't know Casey, but we crossed paths twice, once in the high country and then once again coming down in the volcano. She was kind of battling some sort of, I don't know if it was a hip or back thing. And Megan, I mean, Megan she won the 50-year-old men's division.
Again.
And I guess I just have questions about it, because I love running with those women. I love being a part of their races. I love being a part of the spirit that women ultramarathon runners bring to Western states. We've seen it with Rory the last few years. I know she's not here this year, but there's a spirit that women, I don't mean to just stereotype it, because it's not a stereotype. It's a spirit they bring to the event that I just felt was missing this year.
It's interesting because you, I hope I don't offend, have this duality of that almost has the same feminine.
I do.
And it's this.
I would have been a much better woman runner than male runner.
No, but I don't mean this as an insult, really. But like, in that there's this joie de vivre in running the race, and a fierce competitiveness. I've run with Nikki, been so fortunate to run with her, and the last time I ran it for 2 times ago, for many miles in the high country, all the way to Swinging Bridge. And for the first 40, 50, 60, whatever miles, she has this, we were singing, I think, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and Honey Badger, and we're chatting, and then I would not want to fuck with Nikki.
No.
The last
it's game
30
on.
miles or 40 miles. And I think you have sort of the same spirit about you. But
I do, I'm all chatty till Forest Hill.
But how? It's a unique. It's much different than the guy's perspective on the race.
Yeah, but those are guys trying to win. You know, I mean, and I.
But those are women trying to win.
Yeah.
And how?
Well, I just
maybe that is the feminine spirit of this race. Is.
Well, look at what we have right now. The next couple of years of 10-year buckles are almost all going to go to women. You know, there's a couple guys in there, but Nikki's going to get hers next year, and Megan's going to get hers the following year. And they're just going to get them because they're perennial top 10s.
How do we make those people, the Nikkis and the Megans, a legacy of our sport? Because people look up to Gordy as being a pioneer. There's Tim Tweetmeyer. There's Scott Jurek with 7 straight.
Well, I don't know if I have any role in this, but I'm going to do my damnedest to make sure they're a legacy of our sport people. Because,
even Ann Tracy.
If I want to hang out, if I want to run Western States and finish strong, and I want to run 20, 21, 22 hours, which is a really good time at this race for anybody, I'm going to tuck in with Nikki Kimball and Megan Arbogast and get it done.
Run like a girl.
I really am. I mean, as much as I love and respect these guys pushing the envelope at 14, 15 hours, that's where it's at. And I think Casey learned that this weekend. You know, Pam is a living embodiment of that. She hasn't been doing it as much, as long, but I'd love to see Pam get a 10-year buckle in 2021 or whenever it'll be, because she has the same spirit.
How many finishes? 4?
I think 4.
She has at least 4, but
yeah, 1 yellow. You know, she probably carries that yellow one with pride, though.
As somebody with a relatively slow Wasatch, I know that I would love a Crimson Cheetah someday. But having Scotty Mills whip me to walk 25 miles without a step of running and get that next buckle,
just
get the blue buckle.
Get the blue buckle.
You know what? There's pride in that.
So I think the women have a better, I'm going to make a judgment here, but I think the women have a better attitude to this event. And that's why we have these people hanging around. Now, there are guys, Barger, Lance, you know, they're local or semi-local. They're on their 8th and 9th. We got some guys coming in for the 10-day buckle as well. But it's harder and harder.
But that's interesting, because I was looking at I'm not probably as analytical as you or an Ian Sharman, but about Western States. But looking back, when I was looking at the group think predictions from I Run Far from 2009, the first year we did it, there were guys like Barger and Skadden and these guys and Dink Taylor.
Yeah.
These guys that, for me, when I started ultra running in 2002 and ran my first 100 in 2004, were the top elite of the sport.
Right.
But they got token votes this year.
I bet you still have. Back then, you had Nikki and Megan in there.
You did, but but how do you deal with continuity in the sport? Because I mean, Tim Tweetmeyer is an outlier. It's impossible to be a Tim Tweetmeyer these days.
No, there are no more. Those days are gone.
You can't do 25. No one will ever have 25 finishes again.
The closest you're going to get is like the 10-year buckle, or the guys out at Hard Rock, Kirk, Apt, Blake Wood, Rock Horton. They've done Leadville too. I mean, it again, like I said a little while ago, it depends what matters to you. And I never wavered on what mattered to me. What mattered to me was Western States. Being at my peak at Western States.
Whatever that is.
My peak this year was 1921. And my peak in 2011 was 1639. But whenever I showed up, I was at my peak.
So it's not about maybe being top 10 for X number of years or running a sub 19 hour for X number of years. For me, as a baseball fan, Jamie Moyer.
Yeah.
He ended up, he's Tom Green. Tom Green is Jamie Moyer.
Yeah.
You know what? And Tom Green's been doing it for a decade. Finishing in that last 20 minutes of Western States where every bit of wile and determination, and you know what? All the physical aspects, you're not as capable as anybody else in the race. But everything else you bring, the spirit, the heart, the passion, the intelligence, can get you to whatever that goal is. And is that how we change the perspective on, you know, it's an elite competitive race, which Western States is, but the duality of Western States is that it's this elite competitive race, and then there's the egalitarian everyman aspect.
And that really matters to everyone here. The Western States Board, Craig, the community, what matters is finishing. It's just being here, being in it, in the arena. And I think that's not going to go away. It would help if it was valued a little bit. And that's where this whole ambassador thing, that's where I'd like to help.
But isn't the best way you can do that to be an ambassador on the course at some point? I mean, really,
running the race?
No, I don't mean that as a...
You're trying again.
No, but I don't mean that as a trick question. But I mean, really, not next year, not the year after, but...
Yeah, there's guys...
2025, literally.
Jim Scott sent me an email today. He's like, yeah, it's great that you got your 10. I'd love for you to try for 20 because everyone loves what you give. But that's kind of making an assumption that I won't be as passionate about it when I'm not running it. And what I'm saying is, you guys got me. I'm hooked. I'm hooked on Western States. I don't need to run it to continue to be hooked. The way I've seen Craig and Tim hasn't run it since 2006, but he's as passionate about this event as he's ever been.
That actually shocks me.
His 25th was in 2006.
Because I'm here every year, and I just assumed it was like 2009 or 2011.
2006. He ran his last one.
And next year, he's probably going to be an aid station captain somewhere, or.
Well, if he is, I want to go hang out with him. I think
we might talk about that later because I'm going to make my play.
You know what would be? but could you imagine? I would love to be at an aid station.
See everyone through.
And in one of the later ones. I don't know. I like to think that maybe some people, if I walked up to them and said, "Get out of that chair, have some broth, eat these chips. This saltine's going to get you through, and you're going to go." It might have the same impact as what Shelley did to Nick Clark.
How do you weigh the being a competitor and you, no matter what you say about not wanting to run, that thought will come across your head every year going forward.
Let me stop one thing you said. It's not that I don't want to run. Okay, what I feel like, and I've used up a Western States spot for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And I've had my day at Western States. And so That's what I want to do. I want, you know, there's only 369 spots. I want them to be spread around.
Thank you, Rock Horton. Right. No, but I say that as
exactly.
Rock Horton. I mean, there are people who try to get into Western or Hard Rock every year, and a lot of them have been doing this for years and don't have a good chance of finishing anymore.
Right.
Rock Horton did 10, and now he captains Virginius.
That's what I'm doing. And now there's no version of Virginius here yet, but my point more is that, well, here's this guy. He's coming to give me a saltine or a little sip of Sprite, and he's done this race 10 times. He must know what he's talking about.
But then there's this other aspect. Okay, there's being the Shelley. There's being the person at the aid station who helps this person with a bit of knowledge to improve their performance or to get them to the finish period.
Right.
But as a longtime friend of yours, you also like being a voice. Like literally a voice. How are you going to weigh that with being Tropical John's voice? The vocal cords are probably a bit sore after announcing all these years. I'm sure you've thought about that, or doing the finish line interviews if Trent doesn't want to.
Sure, I mean, like,
you don't mind being on camera.
I'm gonna leave that up to people smarter than me about how they want me to have a role in this race. What I will say is, for the next 10 years at least, on the 4th Saturday in June, I'm going to be here in Auburn, and I'm going to do whatever is needed to make this race as good as it has been and will continue to be. Some people might think that's odd. Some people might think that's strange. Some people might think I could be more well used in other roles. But I think, you know, my running ability may be called into question by some people, but my passion for Western states, I think, is unassailable.
You have firmly established that.
And so if you want somebody who is going to give his all for this event, whether he's running it or not, I think I should be at least in your top 5.
There's no better way to end this weekend in this interview. Great job, HAW. Andrew, well done.
The battery must be trashed.
No, just dude, you nailed it. If you're not crewing an aid station, next time I run this, I want 10 miles. I want 10 miles.
You got it.
Give me Cal Street.
I can do Cal Street.
Oh. You know what? Next year, see you in Squaw. Of the 3 beers, what was the best?
I think the first one.
I was going to say the first one.
Yeah,
all right. Because you know what? The camera's still rolling. We're going with Lagunitas Hop Stupid. Both the Stone Traditional IPA and Talon Double IPA. Good?
Better.
Hop Stupid. Oh, there we go.
Damn, we did use 45 minutes.
45 minutes? Are you kidding me? We are at an hour 23.
You're going to edit this.